My name is Judge Rick Roach, and I'm running for Florida State Senate District 13 in the 2016 election. My program talks a lot about Florida today and a lot of the issues that are facing us, and then I've got some strategies that I believe will help us to build a better Florida. I'm an educator by trade, over 40 years in education as a teacher, counselor, coach, school board member, trainer of teachers. And so when I ran for office in the state Senate, I knew that I had a pretty good handle on education. So I began to look at what was most important to Florida voters. And as I did, 4 areas came out pretty prominent in every poll I looked at. And one of them, almost always in the number 1 slot, was jobs. We're talking about average wage and high wage jobs. We have plenty of low wage jobs in Florida. So we're looking at the better jobs. Safety was a huge issue with the Florida voters. I'll refer to that as crime and corrections. Education was in the top 4, and healthcare issues were also in the top 4. So when I began to investigate jobs, how to bring jobs to Florida, and some of the crime issues and prison issues, healthcare issues, it didn't take long for me to figure that most all of these issues were in some way directly related to education. So it was very easy for me to come up with a platform that will really address those 4 major issues. And bottom line, I think if we can fix education, we will fix Florida and all the major issues that go with it and become a diversified, economically powerful state. Let's start today with Florida today. I thought it was appropriate to look at the budget. And I want to talk about the general revenue budget. That's the actual dollars that the legislators debate over. There's 3 colors on here that stand out for me, and I want you to look at, first of all, in 1996, about 18 years ago, 62% of the state revenue budget went to education, pre-K through university. 24% went to human services, which is primarily food and medicine, healthcare, and those are for people that need help in that area. And then 8% went to incarcerations, criminal justice, and corrections. But I want you to look what happened just 16 to 18 years later. We're going the wrong way. Now you see that education has now shrunk to 52% of the general revenue budget, but the human services grew from 24 to 30%, meaning that more and more people need our help to subsidize health care and food, and also more and more people are being jailed. So we're actually building prisons, adding prison beds, and less dollars go to education. That's a problem, and I don't see anything stopping that. Slide 2 is important because Florida for 16 years now has used the FCAT test to measure student achievement in school grades and teacher performance to some degree. I've always been an advocate for testing and accountability, but I'm not an advocate for the misuse of testing. Once you misuse a standardized test, it no longer becomes a valid instrument. Notice down below in the dark blue areas, you're going to see Florida's flat FCAT scores. For 16 years, since I was been on the school board, in grades 3, 8, and 10, I'll use an example, we've always had a failure rate of 34%, give or take a couple of percentage points from 3rd grade, 38% in 8th grade, and around 55% in 10th grade. So what you're seeing here is these tests are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and that is they rank children. They're simply ranking instruments. They're more like bell curve instruments than they are achievement test instruments. Slide 3 is a result of misusing high-stakes testing. For 16 years, we have had, give or take, about 50,000 kids in Florida who do not graduate from high school. These kids are the largest users of the subsidy budgets on the human services, on the criminal justice area. We also have, and I think this doesn't get talked about a lot, there's another 50,000 kids, and it's probably a conservative number, who graduate high school, but they have very few, if any, skills that will really attach them to marketable jobs in the workplace. And this is primarily because they've used most of their high school electives taking test prep courses, trying to make sure that they pass the test. Another astounding statistic was that 41% of our college graduates are stuck in low-wage jobs, jobs that don't require a college degree. Florida is poor when it comes to average and high-wage jobs. Slide 4, we're looking at the dollars, the cash flow that goes on to prop up Slide 2, which are the achievement tests. We have so many misappropriations of our dollars here that really are a result of the misuse of standardized testing. We fail kids to the tune of 58,000 kids a year, costing us over $600 million to retain them an additional year. There's no research with school psychologists for 60 years that supports that move. We have test prep teachers to the point of over $1 billion in salary. These are test prep teachers that never existed 16 years ago when I was a counselor at Boone High School and Colonial High Schools. Because we have kids who don't graduate from high school, it costs us, all of our citizens, $2.5 billion reoccurring every year for the last 16 years. The denial of a high school diploma is simply kids that don't graduate. They take about $2.5 billion from our budget. It costs us $1 billion to write end-of-course exams, primarily to grade teachers, which has never worked in United States history. The $351 million are other things like test retakes, teacher turnover that costs us a lot of money. None of this has to happen, and $5.6 billion could be put back into the system immediately if we simply use standardized testing appropriately. Number 5 is kind of a helicopter view of the state of Florida and goes back to my 4 top voter issues. We have 17% of Floridians living in poverty, and over half of our school children go to school every day in that particular level of economic. The 43% is called ALICE. It's an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. It's a fancy word for the working poor, showing that Florida is full of jobs that don't pay a lot of money, and these are people that need extra help in the subsidy area on the general revenue budget. I looked at the prisons. Recidivism. When people do serve their terms in prison and come out, 42% go right back because we don't have jobs waiting for them. We don't have training that really puts them in a good position to be a contributing member of society. Our homeless population at 30,000 in Central Florida alone has doubled in 5 years. That's going the wrong way. Orlando averages 50 out of 50 in average income at $29,000 a year. 49 municipalities in America have a better average income than we do. Over 1 million people are uninsured, and our school funding is always 49 out of 50. If you look at slide 6, we're talking about a Chamber of Commerce study that talks about the talent gap. This is a problem, we call it the classroom to prison and poverty pipeline. Florida actually has over 200,000 job openings that all pay very, very good wages with health insurance benefits, and they can't find Floridians to fill the jobs. So that's where the talent gap comes from. We can't find Florida talent. These companies are recruiting from out of state and out of the country in order to fill those positions. It's my theory that we have students who are fully capable of taking these jobs who are simply trapped in test prep courses, unable to join the workforce. A lot of people don't know that only 25% of our kids actually go to a 4-year college and graduate. The other 75% do not, and they are perfect candidates for many of these Florida openings. Almost half of those jobs up there don't require a 4-year college degree. So the talent gap exists, and it needs to stop. It needs to be eliminated, and I'll show you how that's going to happen in the next slides. My prediction in slide 7 is simply this. If we don't do something different, something very, very powerful, we're going to have a general revenue budget that looks just like you're looking at here. We'll start to dip to 32% of the people needing our human services, food and medicine. We'll incarcerate more people, and we'll have less money going to pre-K through college. On slide 8, I just simply put a couple of things that are very alarming. One, we're losing 50% of our school teachers every 5 years. If that were policemen or firemen, there would be an outrage in this country. And the last one I want to mention is that venture capital, companies coming to Florida to put good jobs in Florida, are almost few and far between. Only 0.5% of all the venture capital in America comes to Florida. We must end this cycle. I want to talk about the Roach Initiative, Building a Better Florida. This is the part that I believe we can change Florida. We can change the paradigm of Florida's educational system. We can improve our safety. We can improve the number of jobs coming in here. And of course, with that comes health care. And number 9, the bill declaration I want to talk about is, and as simple as it sounds, I'm only asking that we use standardized testing to measure student achievement. only in the way the testing company designed it or intended it to be used. I'm not an anti-test guy. I'm simply a guy that says if you're going to use those kind of tests, use them the way that we're designed. If we buy an automobile, most of us know that it doesn't work as a submarine. If we buy a toaster, we also know that's not going to be a good microwave oven. Same things with standardized testing. They need to be used the way they're written. If you look at slide 10, there's the evidence. Pearson is a testing company, a worldwide testing company that has benefited from millions and millions and millions of dollars providing tests and retests for our kids. And they're very clear about their instructions. And they say, as you can read very clearly here, that they're not to be used as a single measure. They're used to be designed for an overall assessment process. And don't forget about customers' professional judgment. That's your school teachers, your parents, and your principals. If we were to fire Pearson today, McGraw-Hill would say the same thing. Notice the Florida DOE website also talks about multiple pieces of evidence collected over time as the best way to measure students. Our Florida psychologists have been very clear about talking about misusing a test. They even call it unethical. And finally, when we're measured to Shanghai and Canada and Finland across the world as being poorly represented in student assessment, notice that even the PISA folks will tell you not to use these test results to make any important educational policy decisions. Slide 11 is a proposed method that would change the paradigm of Florida's economic engine. The proposed method simply puts standardized testing where it belongs as a piece of the comprehensive assessment program. Down to the left side, we've got the GPA or grade point average. These are the grades that professional teachers, state-certified teachers, assign children based on their student work. Student portfolio and projects are the best indicator of how kids learn and how to demonstrate that learning going on. Students working together with projects and portfolios allow kids to develop the soft skills necessary as well for businesses and careers. Also new to Florida is a reading and math data-driven instruction. This is a way we can calibrate children's reading and math levels instantly, and that particular data is given to students and teachers instantly so that they can improve instruction based on that feedback. Now we have an instrument that can measure appropriately reading and math scores the entire year and give legislators and our governor and parents and anybody else that's interested a really complete, authentic picture of how kids are doing. So if you take those 4 ingredients there, you've got an accurate picture of how kids are doing, and you'll change Florida's educational paradigm and open up the economic climate. That will immediately, in slide 12, repurpose 17,000 test prep teachers that are now teaching test prep courses in secondary schools in Florida's high schools and middle schools, and let's put them into career elective teachers. That will represent 102,000 different classes every day that would allow kids to get into secondary school classes that would actually match them up to their interest and talent levels and eventually assign them and align them with a good paying job in Florida. Slide 13 looks at the Florida openings now, but it's much different than the other page. Now we've got the Florida openings who are now moving their courses into our high schools, into our middle schools, and allowing our kids to be able to dip their toes in the water on these careers and even earn apprenticeships and internships to see if these are areas that would be of interest to them when they graduate from high school. Now you've got companies in Florida with the over 200,000 jobs who are very happy because they're not spending their recruiting dollars out of state. They're spending their recruiting dollars right here at home. We're home growing our workforce. I honestly believe that after 2 years in office with this model, we can get our general revenue budget back to where it was in the 1996 levels, where 62% of the dollars now go back to education. We can reduce the need for food and medicine from people because now they're employed, and we can start closing a prison or two instead of building them. Another 2 years later, I believe that growth will be another 10%, and it's all based on the fact that whenever you graduate a kid from school or they come into school, out of school with good work skills, they are putting about $54,000 back into the economy. All you have to do is start doing the math to that. 54,000 times 10,000 kids, 50,000 kids, 100,000 kids. Now you've got a brand new state with a diversified economy. So let's build a better Florida. Let's bring more high-wage jobs back to Florida. Let's take the ones that we have and fill them. Let's tell people we'll home grow their workforce, because that's something that not a lot of states are doing. We can have the nation's best schools if we simply evaluate them effectively and authentically. And finally, the nation's safest and healthiest state will be here, because when people have a job, when they have a career, and when they eat well and take care of their families, they're safe and they're healthy. I'm asking you to support me in the state Senate race, and I'm asking you to bring me out to your work location or your home and talk further about this particular model. And thank you very much for taking the time to listen.